Overachieving, or the drive to perform better and achieve more than what is standard or expected, can lead to a lot of positive outcomes, but also a higher probability of burnout. So I consider myself a recovering overachiever. What about you, Liz?
I am an active overachiever.
All right, well, today we're talking about, is overachieving worth it?
Let's talk about it.
Welcome to Net with Lizzy and Lissa, where we analyze hidden costs and empower you to make your own damn decisions in life. Each episode covers a different facet of life, and at the end of each episode, we each give our takes on whether we think something is net positive or net negative.
I'm Lizzy, a strategist and consultant with almost 20 years of experience in finance and investing.
And I'm Lissa, a personal finance expert and a certified financial planner. We're best friends who talk about money
and everything else.
Is overachieving worth it?
First up, running the numbers on overachieving.
Hogan Assessments, a US-based HR consulting firm, reported that the personality profile of overachievers makes up 17% of the working population. This was a study back in 2020.
Okay, so not that big.
Yeah, not that, but 1 in 5 almost.
Okay, so, yeah. In a study 10 years ago, the National Library of Medicine reported that 3 out of 10 children can be classified as maladaptive perfectionists by adolescents, meaning their expectations of self are sky high. So 30%.
Right. And what I read in that, maladaptive means like hard to adapt to your circumstances and environment. So it's actually, it's
a negative.
It's a
right.
negative.
Yeah.
Now, according to a new research study from Talker Research that surveyed 2,000 adults, a quarter of Americans are burnt out before the age of 30.
Whew.
1 in 4 Americans burnt out
All
by
right.
the time they're 30.
All right.
Yeah.
Across all ages, the study reports that finances and politics are higher sources of burnout than work. Interesting.
Yeah.
However, for younger generations, work is by far the highest stressor, with 33% of younger people reporting it as a cause of stress and burnout.
Yeah, the top reason for stress and burnout. Well, we know there's more to life than numbers, so let's talk about it. Is overachieving worth it?
Whew.
Definitions first, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
We mentioned overachieving and perfectionism, which I think are two different things, but very
interconnected, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've really put thought into being an overachiever, what the definition is, because I don't know what it's like to not be that way, you know?
So like achieving is the norm for you. So others might view it as overachieving, where you're just
for me, it's just how I operate.
How you operate.
And we can dig into why that is.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I would kind of take offense to that and be like, I don't know any other way to exist in the world.
Because there's a negative connotation.
There can be, yeah.
Overachieving.
Or, workaholic, or any of those similar terms, right? And be like, this is just how I am. Yeah. So, I would kind of get offended by it. Now my perspective has become a bit more nuanced.
Yeah. Well, so on overachieving, I looked up the definition. There's not one definition, but there was one article that explained some of the traits you might see in an overachiever, and that includes being a high performer, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Being successful professionally, which is a good thing. Being dubbed a workaholic, which is typically a bad thing.
Yeah.
Being a perfectionist, which we'll get into, but I don't know if that's a good or a bad.
I think it's a bad thing, personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Poor work-life balance, again, negative. Focused on the future, I think neutral or good.
Yep.
And tendency to set unrealistic goals.
I disagree with that one.
Oh, really?
But yeah.
Never satisfied, inability to deal with criticism, feeling stretched too thin, motivated by fear. So it's a mixed bag of what an overachiever might look like.
Some of those definitely resonate with me and some do not. But
right. But maybe you're not an overachiever then.
Well, we can discuss, right?
Well, let's discuss.
Yeah. So do you want to share your journey?
Yeah, because I said I'm a recovering overachiever. I know where being an overachiever comes from for me. My childhood, my parents. They're immigrants who came from the Philippines to the United States. They came separately at different journeys in their own lives, and both came with very little. And so this is very common in immigrant culture in any country, but very big in the United States. Like, people who come to the United States who aren't from here, depending on what decade and when that was, you work hard. You learn to work hard, and that's how you find success. The more work you put in, the more of a fruitful life you'll have, the more money you'll have, the more you'll be able to have all the nice things in life, food on the table, a nice house, and everything else that you want in a lifestyle. So that's exactly where it comes from for me.
Can you remember a time when you didn't operate that way? Like as a kid?
No, because me personally, and it varies, right? Not every single immigrant family that I know brought out children who are like me. I think there's a tendency.
Yeah.
So I think some people end up rebelling against it, whereas me, on the other hand, I followed it, and that's because I got rewarded. So I can't, to answer your question, I don't remember a time that I wasn't like that. My earliest memories are getting rewarded, even with money, for getting good grades in school. Yep. So I've always I've always had this thing within me to strive to be the best. Looking back, I don't like parts of that where it was in comparison to others, because now I feel like the overachiever part. Now I just feel I strive for success in different ways because I have a different definition of success for myself, rather than what someone else is telling me to do, or rather than having to compare myself and basically shit on others. That I don't like at all about being an overachiever.
And did that become, I think I know the answer, a part of your identity?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think everyone who's been around me, I think they, like, the messages I get are like, oh, like, Lisa's successful. Like, you know what? I got voted most likely to succeed in my middle school yearbook as well as my high school yearbook. And I was so proud of that back then, because I'm like,
But that's nothing wrong
there's nothing
with
wrong
that, yeah.
But parts of me wanted to be like, most athletic, cutest couple, whatever,
Right.
like something for appeance. But it was like, oh, my brains. And back then, and
I understand.
right?
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, looking back, I still am proud of those achievements, but it makes me realize what people's perceptions were of me because of the way I operated.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
yeah, Lisa's going to do big things in life, but again, there's pressure with that, because it's like, oh, I better do big things in life, otherwise people are going to think I'm a loser. But then again, now that I'm an adult, I don't care what those people think.
So how did you get to that point? How did you get into recovery?
So part of it, which I think about all the time, is, would I even get to this point of being a recovering overachiever had I not achieved? Because I actually feel I've done a lot, got a college degree, got a master's degree. I ended up working most of my career at a top company, making good money. So those are what the traditional sense of success. I had to burn out to come out of the other end to redefine success for me being happiness, health, joy, and a little bit of that money and a little bit of those achievements too. And so I think that was the journey for me. And what I think about all the time is that necessary for every person to have to go through that to come out on the other end? Or is there a way to proactively come away from being an overachiever?
Yeah. Well, on the flip side, something I think about is, if I wasn't this way, my life would look very different. And I'm grateful for where I am and for the things the life I've been able to build for myself as a result of those things. And so if you change that, do you still end up in the place that you end up?
Right. Well, I'm curious where your
Yeah,
overachieving comes from.
It's really interesting because it's very different, our kind of roots. So I think for me, and this is something I'm like literally actively analyzing with my therapist yesterday, to some extent. So there's kind of three things that I understand now. One, I have ADHD, and what that creates for you is you don't have the same dopamine regulation, and so you are attracted to challenges. And so I am highly motivated by something new, highly motivated by learning. This is a hard thing, go do it. And that's just the way my brain works. I will never be any different than that. And so most of my overachieving was internal. It was personally motivated. I didn't really ever feel the weight of other people's expectations, or I did get validation from it, but it was more just my own drive to be that way.
Your physiological reward system.
My reward system, right. So that is kind of the main part of it. There's another layer, more similar to your experience of we were very poor. And so, there's something tied to finding my own path that will prevent that and give more security. And then the third layer, the part that I'm still examining, is this sense of people pleasing that, like, God forbid I be an inconvenience to anyone or cause any conflict ever in life. So I have to over prepare to prevent any instance of someone being upset with me. And that's the part that, and in all of these areas, I've grown a lot. And my perfectionism has like really, really grown and evolved. But that's the area I'm still examining of like where that comes from. And it's like a generational thing with my mom and her dad. And this sense of like, I can't have needs, or I can't, fuck up ever. Yeah. So that's kind of the different part. But most of it has been more driven by my ADHD. Mm-hmm. And I've had, when I say I'm active in overachieving, I am, but very differently than I used to be. And so I have gone through my period of burnout in my business. I've talked about it on other episodes, and depression and my ADHD diagnosis and that kind of thing. Now my overachieving is more well-rounded, I'll say, in the sense that like currently in my life or recently in my life, I've had my startup business, pursuing my Kaya certification, being very, very active and heavily involved with my family and having a day-to-day role with my nieces and nephews, helping plan Lisa's bachelorette party, trying to maintain my health, moving, having a puppy, just so many things all at once. And have been having to very recently examine like what is enough in different areas of my life, in friendships, for myself, and for the first time be like, oh, maybe I can't do all of these things at once. Because I've always had this mindset like, of course I can do that. Yeah. Or of course, why can't I also be really fit while doing these things? Yeah. I just need to be disciplined. And it's been this kind of shift of like, oh, I'm in a different place in my life, which does mean having more balance, prioritizing rest, getting enough sleep. But I'm older. My energy is different. Like the things that worked for me when I was 20 don't work now. Yeah. And so maybe that means I need to reset my expectations of myself. Yeah. And so that's kind of the big difference. I think yours was rooted in yourself relative to other people.
And rewarded with external
And things. Mine, external validation is not effective for me. Right. It's all the internal.
Interesting. So let's say there's this big thing you're shooting for. Like, for example, you took a big exam recently. Mm-hmm. We're waiting to hear how that went. And let's manifest that you pass it. Yeah. And you feel good about it. It's how, I guess, what percentage of that is like your own, yes, I achieved it, versus, oh, other people will see that as an achievement, and that's a driving force for me?
90% my own. Yeah.
Interesting.
Like the reason I'm doing it is a little bit around, it gives me some extra credentials in my career. And we talked about this on our certifications episode. Mm-hmm. And, some validation where I may be kind of discounted being a younger woman and coming from a marketing background. But the majority of it is like, I like to learn. I think it's interesting. I like to acquire skills because I have enjoyed the process. Yeah. And I just think it'd be cool to do it.
Yeah.
So that's the part that does make it challenging for me, because that's my brain. And so I'll get excited about something and want to do it and want to learn it, and then can overextend myself pretty easily.
Right. So something that I'm thinking about, and I want to know if it resonates with you, is because I think it's very multi-layered. Like, I could say that a lot of my overachieving tendencies came from my immigrant parents, the rewarding for hard work. But I also think there's other layers, such as being a woman in this society. I actually recently just filmed a YouTube video where I talked about this, where women, you know, civil rights movement, 1960s, like more rights for women, and then women starting to work more jobs, you know, be in the workforce rather than just homemakers. And there's a lot of people today in 2025 who feel like, yeah, everything's equal now, right? Men and women have the same opportunities. And there's a lot of truth in that, right? Women can technically apply to jobs anywhere and get those jobs. But I think what they're discounting is the fact that before that time, and especially at the beginning of that time, those first few decades where women were just learning to be in the workforce, right? They're starting with like receptionist jobs and administrative roles where they have to answer to others. They're not the bosses. It took a while for women to start becoming more frequent in those bosses. But even today, if you look at what CEOs look like across the board on all companies, you're not going to see, you'll see more women than you did 60 years ago, but you're not going to see that many. So what people discount is that has an internal challenge for women within society that men will never understand, or like someone who's never been marginalized will never understand that is fighting with us too. We have to achieve because we got to convince you that we deserve to be here.
Right.
And
especially for women of color,
and
men of color experience that too differently.
Yeah, queer people of color, like so many different layers where
that intersectionality.
Yeah, you're a marginalized group, and so you have that additional.
You have to be better.
You have to be better
in order to get that bare minimum. In order to get less
rewards, right? Yeah. So does that resonate with you as a woman?
I think it is a fact. I haven't internalized that or that hasn't been prominent in the way I thought about the choices I made. But it's definitely there. I definitely have a prove myself. Yeah. I think it manifests more in like basketball when we play. But I've talked about before, I've been very fortunate to be in work environments where I was amplified. As a young woman, especially, my more recent situation is where that has come out, and I've kind of dealt with that more and have had to confront the fact that people are going to perceive me, because I used to be more, I don't care how they're going to perceive me, I'm going to prove them wrong as soon as I talk.
Right.
And that is true, but also recognizing the reality of those perceptions, and some people you're not going to convince. That's come into play a little bit and was part of my decision to get this certification for sure. So
I do want to dig into what are the costs of this overachievement, but before we get that, like, what are the benefits? Like, what have we gotten out of, so Liz and I, in our own separate paths, I feel like tend to find challenges and find ways to execute on them and to achieve goals and what people consider success and what we consider success. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot that's come out of that, right?
Yeah.
I would say.
And the one part of this definition that didn't totally resonate with me is a lot of times people think of it as specific to work. And I think you and I both have these kind of tendencies that apply to different areas of our life, whether that's like health and fitness, whether it's hobbies or interests. And we are kind of like project people. We'll take on something, like you made a Christmas album because you wanted to see if you could do it, and I think that's fucking cool. I really like that. And so that part I wouldn't ever want to change, because we get to learn about a lot of stuff and have like fun adventures that
It adds variety in life.
yeah, you meet great people by pursuing these things. It is enriching. You acquire interesting information that, like for me, it's not an overachieving quality necessarily, but it's interconnected of this kind of voracious need to learn.
Yeah.
I am Googling 100 things a day.
Right.
Random, God, no, I could go through my tabs right now and it is bizarre.
Yeah.
But I acquire a lot of knowledge, and then that like interconnectivity of the different things I know is kind of like the root of why I've been successful in my career.
It makes you a more interesting human being. It connects you to others who have similar interests and tastes. I think there's a lot of benefit that comes out of it.
You get, I mean, it can be I've had a lot of people tell me it's inspiring, and that's really cool and rewarding, and like, oh, wow, I didn't think that. That's not why I set out to pursue the things I pursue.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. And for me, the biggest thing it's gotten me is freedom, in the sense that I have put myself in a position in my life where I can call my own shots professionally and do it without being afraid.
Yeah.
Because I know that at the end of the day, if I have to go work really hard at a shittier job, I will. I know I'll land on my feet eventually. So it's given me that like confidence to be more fearless and kind of do what I want.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's like my big motivating value and driver in life. So that's very worth it.
Yeah.
There are downsides, however.
But on that makes me think of even the word overachiever, because a growth mindset and all these things, all the benefits you get from being curious, growing, learning, doing things, has a lot of positive output. And so who gets to decide when you're achieving versus overachieving, doing too much, right? It's just relative.
Exactly. And I think that's why I would push back. Now the line is when it's detrimental to your health, to your relationships, and I've experienced that too, and to some extent actively experience that.
Yeah.
So what has your relationship been with that? How do you find that line?
Looking back, I would say, especially in my 20s, when I got out of grad school into the workforce and really cared a lot about career. I thought career was everything. I thought that's what you spend all your time at, so that's what you want to strive to be great at, because it directly impacts your finances and your quality of life. That's all. I couldn't think outside of that box. And so, similar to you, being an achiever or overachiever in that time of my life led to where I am today, where I'm more confident. I know I'll land on my feet. I can take leaps. I have the financial cushion. I have all those great things to allow myself more freedom. I think where I missed out in those years, I maintained friendships, but I definitely said no to many things, you know, because I'd rather either get rest or work on an evening or a weekend. So I skipped out on things. I definitely had a weirder dating life. I definitely dated, but I think it wasn't my main focus.
Yeah.
Because my focus was achieve. Like that came first. I wanted to get that checked off the list in life before even focusing on getting married and having a family, which there's no right timeline for any of that. It's just whatever you want in your life at a given moment. So that's what I think looking in hindsight, but back then I wouldn't have known the difference. That was just my worldview, was work hard.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that around like socializing. I think of that too. And then I had the conversation with my mom once, and I was kind of describing that. And for example, in college, we met in college. I maybe went to like maybe five parties.
1 to 5.
I was like, no, there were a couple more. I think I went to one frat party, but 5 total parties probably in college. I didn't drink, and I wasn't like the most studious, but I was focused, and I also worked all through college. And I remember being like, oh, I took it so seriously, and I was in a rush to get out of school. I used to always be in a rush to get to the next thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I knew then what I know now, this is going to be the best time of your life, the least responsibilities as an adult, like just take your time. And so I think like, oh, I would have done more. And I was talking to my mom and she was like, no, you wouldn't have. Like you didn't want to do those things. Right. If you really wanted to do them, you would have. So there is some of that, like, oh, I spent so many nights going to bed early so I could be fresh for work and I could have gone out. Would I have?
Yeah, you don't know.
I don't know, you know. So, but there is sacrifice, right? Absolutely. I mean, recently for me, my social life has been on the back burner.
Yeah.
I mean, I have been all work in different areas, and well, all work, study, and family. Really, that has kind of come to the forefront. There's been a lot of sacrifice, and it just is, right? You miss out on things. You know, just this past week, there are a couple things you invited me to. Sorry, I can't. Yeah, and that it's just part of it, you know. But I think the greater costs for me are more of the mental health side.
Yeah.
So, to some extent, physical health. I think it used to take more of a toll on my sleep. I would stay up late, you know, kind of overdo it and not prioritize rest because I didn't recognize that resting now is going to prevent me from getting sick or whatever and missing more time in the long run.
More time, but also in a weird way, indirectly leads right back to money. So when I experienced burnout in my career, and like I said, that was what kind of led me to this new path of still wanting to achieve goals, but not overdoing it to where I'm burning myself out. And I think what I learned, a big thing I learned at that point was I thought that working hard was going to be the solution because the harder I worked, the more money I could make, and the more money I would have, the better quality of life. But then it backfired for me in particular, because what happened was I burned out, and I ended up getting, like, it led me to taking a pay cut. I took a leap to leave the job. So I took a pay cut, which was fine, but I was also now paying money for therapy, for, you know, meditative yoga classes, like things that would help my health, which I should, you know, I now I incorporate.
They're good anyway,
but there's definitely some things I spent money on and lost money on that related directly to my health,
for sure,
because of the fact that I was overachieving and burning myself out. So I think major financial costs, because like you overachieve, you assume you're just going to make more money, and that's the upside of being an achiever. But there's also you can also lose financially.
Yeah, that's a really great point that I think people don't consider.
And long-term health, right?
Yeah.
Long-term health.
Well, yeah, you know, the stress, you can lose years off your life.
Years off your life, or just years and years of trying to get on the other end of that traumatic experience or phase of life where you overachieved.
Well, and I think a lot of people have this association, like, I just need to get here, and then I'll be able to rest.
Well, I love that you said that, because I wouldn't say every day, more often than not, when I find myself working too much, too hard, I bring it back to like folks like Kobe Bryant and other thought leaders who try to remind us that the journey and the process itself is the journey, not the end goal. Because when you're always just chasing that end goal, it's the hedonic treadmill where you get to that goal, it feels good for a little bit, and now you need the next thing. When in that journey of getting to that goal and achieving that goal, did you feel the joy in it?
Right.
And the benefits of even going that path?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to remind yourself that like the journey is where you want to find bits and pieces of joy and excitement and achieve mini achievements along the way.
That is a little easier for me, I would say, because of my ADHD wiring, and that literally the process of it is the motivation.
Getting the little bits of...
Getting the dopamine along the way, where I'm just not very well motivated by like end result rewards.
Like the trophy.
Those, they just don't really resonate with me. So that's a little easier, but at the same time, it manifests for me in like getting so stressed out and getting like this myopic view. So, still it's something I actively manage. I'll have something going on with work that I will feel like, oh my gosh, well, I create these expectations for myself based on God knows what. Like, okay, well, I haven't done this, and there's no clear deadline because I'm one of the owners, so you're kind of just accountable to each other. And I've set this timeline in my head that I have to have it done this day, and I don't. So then I stress out, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And so I have to kind of remind myself like, oh, is this going to matter in 2 weeks, in a month, in a year? Like, this is not moving the needle. I can rest, I can be done now.
Right.
I've gotten better at that, but it's still an active conversation I have to have in my head sometimes.
Have you ever done a Wheel of Life exercise, or are you familiar with it?
Refresh my memory. It sounds familiar.
So I didn't know what this was. And then around that burnout time, I started going to therapy, and I also started seeing a life coach. I didn't know what the difference was. I have a better understanding now. I felt like the life coach was more to guide me through where I am today and where I want to go. Like, what is the path to get there? And the therapist was more like discovering my past and how that is leading me to what I'm thinking and feeling today. So for the life coach, she had the very first thing she had me do was fill out this wheel of life. This particular one had 8 spokes on it, so it was just like a coloring exercise, right? So the spokes, I don't know all of them, but they were like career, finances, family, social life, health, right? Different aspects of life. And it was like on a scale of 1 to 10, fill in the spoke, like how fulfilled are you feeling in that area of life right now? And so the idea is, if you feel pretty full in every area, that wheel is going to be fully colored in, and it's like a smooth ride.
Okay.
Right? Whereas if you're heavy on career is doing great, but you're sacrificing your social life, your finances, or everything else, then that wheel is going to be very janky. I don't know the word, right? It's gonna be very janky. It's going to be a rocky ride, even though you're thriving in one area.
Right.
So it's about finding balance in all areas of life. Each person is never going to have a perfect wheel at any given moment in time, but it's like reflecting on what does that look like for you right now, and are you cool with how that's going?
Yeah.
Right? Because like if you said you're sacrificing your social life right now, that's okay. But how long do you want to be on that ride without filling in that bucket as well?
Right. Or what can fill you up in like short bursts, right? So like, okay, I might go a few weeks without seeing people, but then have like a really good trip or whatever that, like, okay, I'm centered again, and finding that rhythm. I mean, balance is a big part of it, and I think that's, to me, when I think of overachieving and times when I am in that place, it's because I'm out of balance or I'm just overextended. Like right now, I think all the things I've been pursuing are all good things. It's just more than I realistically had capacity for, and didn't really have a choice in a lot of them. So you're out of balance, you're overextended, or pursuing it for the wrong reasons, I think. That can be a big part of it.
Well, I'm glad you said that. What I'm thinking in my head right now is I'm very grateful for you as a friend, because for many years in my life, my goals were always dictated by something external. My parents pushing me to do this, my mom telling me I should do this, what society will give me an award for is, when I don't know when this happened, but you would always tell me about setting goals, but there would always be a values aspect to it. Like, what is the value that's aligning with your life right now? Like, why do you even want this thing? And so that's what makes me wonder, are you even an overachiever? Because Liz constantly reflects on the values behind it and what's driving it and what's the motivator. So in that case, you're just achieving for yourself. Is that even overachieving?
See that this is my trouble with it, but I think it can be. It still can be. So like thinking about, my life right now, and it's kind of coming to an end this period, but all of those things are aligned with my values, every one of them, and how I want to show up for people in my life, my family, my friends, for myself professionally. But it's too much.
Yeah.
And it was creating so much stress, and also like recognizing that I'm also coming out of like a really challenging mental health period anyway. And so it was like exacerbating my anxiety and depression and my ADHD, and to a very serious extent.
Right.
So I think that's my part. I haven't had many instances where I had to layer in is how do I make better decisions, if that's what it comes down to, around how much I take on. Some of these things are just timing out of my control. How do I navigate that? Or how do I reset expectations for myself? So for example, if that meant, I was kind of continually asking myself, with everything I have going on right now, do I want to push out this test? Do I want to wait? And then, and so I was aware enough to have that. Like, I have so much. This is the only thing that feels really optional. And I chose not to because I felt like I've already made so much progress. And I felt like it would just kind of prolong the stress in reality. But that's kind of the thing, is when it's out of balance to the extent that it is raising my stress level so much, that is, to me, overachieving.
Right. Well, I think the upside of that is that you're coming out of this phase, right? Liz was like planning a baby shower for one friend, planning my bachelorette party, and you can't control the dates and timings of those things.
Yeah.
While she said, like, like this exam happened to be around the same time too. But it's like coming out of this, now next time you're faced with decisions like that, like you said, you'll have more data to look back on, like, could I make it work? Could I not? And then go from there. And I feel like that's just part of life, is like the learning experience.
Well, the other interesting thing that has come up out of this, speaking of values and, kind of taking on different things, right? So career achievement is one thing, but even with the bachelorette party or the baby shower for my other best friend, is like, I could have said, no, I don't have the capacity for this. But I also couldn't accept the idea that, like, you're my best friend in the world and I wouldn't do that for you. And, like, would have had to let go of that, or what that means for me as a friend. So that's maybe where some of the external stuff comes in.
Right.
Of
less in career.
Yeah, less in career, more in relationships. Of, like, well, what kind of friend or sister or daughter or whatever would I be? And that isn't aligned with the person I want to be. And so, but my people pleasing will be, I'm going to take that on sometimes at the expense of myself. Right. So that's the part I still need to work on.
Interesting. All right. 20 cents?
20 cents.
20 cents is the segment of the show where both Lizzy and myself, Lissa, each get 60 seconds to give our 2 cents on today's topic, whether it's net positive or net negative for overachieving. Where does 20 cents come from?
Because you get the opinion of 2 dimes. 2
dimes. All right, Liz, you're up first. 60 seconds on the clock. Is overachieving worth it for you?
I think it is. I mean, if I'm referring to this whole tendency, not just the kind of stressed out part of it, I think I don't really know how to be any other way. I like my life. I like the things that it's given me. I like the process of it. And so I don't know that I would change it, other than directing some of that energy into finding healthier and more balanced ways to go about it. And that's another ongoing process and, evolution in my life. But again, it's like, I wouldn't be who I am, have the experience I have, the friendships I have, the life that I have without it. And so I don't want to shit on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Net positive.
Net positive
for Liz on overachieving. I didn't know where that was going to go.
Yeah, I didn't either. Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, Lissa, is overachieving worth it?
overachieving, to me, I'm going net negative.
Ah.
I will say overachieving was worth it for me in the past because similar to Liz, of like what it has brought to my current life, the knowledge, the experience, the money it's brought to my current life. But having gone through that burnout period, I'm constantly checking in to make sure that everything I'm working on right now in this present moment for the future is good and achieving, but not
Overdoing it.
Yeah, not overdoing it. Saying no when I need to, slowing down when I need to. And I will say it's made it harder for me to build my business and make money faster. So I'm like living off cash reserves and my husband, right? Which is fine for me because I have those support systems. But overall, I can't see myself overachieving in the way where I'd take on too much and cause that stress and harm to my health ever again. And that's just my definition of what it looks like. So, but my definition, overachieving, net negative.
All right. That one doesn't surprise me, just because I've seen your evolution firsthand.
Where I am right now.
Yeah,
I want
that's
to
good.
chill. I want to meditate and stuff every night rather than like working till 12 midnight. So
good for you.
That's where I'm at. Well, remember, this is what we think right now at this moment in time. Liz is net positive. I am net negative for overachieving. We're still friends, so we can disagree. But what do you think? Is overachieving worth it?
Hit us up. Let us know what you think. DM us on Instagram at NetNetPodcast or email us at hi@netnetpodcast.com. And if you want to follow us individually, here's where you can find us.
I'm at Wealth for Women of Color on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram.
And I'm on Instagram and TikTok at live_well_Lizzy.
All references, statistics, and resources mentioned can be found in our show notes. This podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be constituted as financial advice. Remember to always do your own research, consult a professional as needed, and feel empowered to make your own damn decisions.